Hi, and welcome to Animalia the Podcast. I'm Natasha, and thank you so much for tuning in. This week, we're giving you a treat. Animalia presents the best of Animalia. We have clips from each of our episodes so far on three major themes: adopt, don't shop, spay and neuter, and relationships. Each of these themes was explored by our guests, and this gives you a chance to catch up in case you've just found us, or to reminisce if you've been with us from the start. Let's kick off this Best of Animalia podcast with the Adopt, Don't Shop theme. As they say, the last shall be first, so we begin with Dr. Mark Driscoll from episode 7. Then you'll hear Tamara Ramlagan from episode 3, and finally a heartwarming story from Elspeth Duncan, our first guest on Animalia. Let's go. I wanted to pick your brain a little bit. We have, as one of our mottos on this podcast, that we adopt and don't shop. Do you have a view and an opinion on the adopt versus shop culture or shop versus adopt, I should say, culture that we have in Trinidad and Tobago?
I have quite a few views on that, to be honest. There are a number of challenges with that situation. We know the status of our shelters. They are overflowing. They need people to come out and adopt. And there are some really wonderful, loving animals there. So I have 3 pets, 1 dog and 2 cats, and they're all rescues. And they have been an amazing part of my life thus far. The breed doesn't really matter when you're looking at an animal that you're looking for companionship. But if you're looking for a guard animal, it's a matter of how the animal is dealt with and trained and handled. The shop approach becomes an actual problem when people insist on importing animals, specifically importing animals through not the most legitimate routes, without trying to say too much. Because the risk that you run there is bringing in who knows what, especially all kinds of diseases that can come in. We are seeing incidents of disease now, or at least suggestions. Let me be fair. We're seeing suggestions of diseases now, but in some cases confirm incidents of diseases that we never had before. And the chances of these coming in with animals that are not coming in through proper quarantine and requiring proper vaccinations, it's scary. It's crazy. And the problem is the supply is obviously there because the demand is there. Having these breeds is seen as a status symbol to many, and they will try to find a shortcut to bring them in. But the fact is we have these animals coming in through back channels, through back alleys, and that brings a host of risks with them. And that's the danger of the shop versus adopt approach. If it reaches a point that you are now encouraging someone to take these less than legitimate approaches to bringing in these animals.
And I understand as well that there are puppy mills in Trinidad as well.
Well, I myself cannot comment, having not seen any myself, but I wouldn't be surprised. It's very easy to get, a few breeding animals or even just 2 breeding animals and just basically churn out puppies. We are not saying that every breeder is a puppy mill. There are some very, very legitimate, upstanding breeders. But like everything, there are those that they are not taking the necessary care, be it nutrition, vaccination, health, of the breeding animals or of the puppies. They are just trying to supply a market. So if I can share something with you quickly.
Sure.
So I went to the veterinary conference in North America this year, and they actually spoke about puppy mills and these people who breed without the proper care. And they drew reference to something that a client can have, which is quite literally a list of questions that a potential client can take to a breeder to ask. So, have these animals been vaccinated? Who is the vet that sees them? May I see the parents? And you ask this long series of questions. And if you as a client are not happy with the answers you're getting, then chances are that breeder may not be providing the care necessary for you to get a good product as someone trying to buy a healthy puppy. And taking it a step further, if you're investigating potential welfare concerns, it can also be taken from that perspective. You ask to see the parents. That's a legitimate request. If the parents are looking malnourished and fearful and unhappy, and you can see the conditions are not the best, you begin to ask, is this the person I want to buy from?
Let's go to the topic now of pedigree dogs. I mean, I was speaking with Elspeth about this very thing, and she was talking about the status symbol that a pedigree animal carries with it. And there are so many animals, strays, pot hounds, etc., that need homes, but few people are willing to take them in. Why do you think that is?
So I have seen different types of people buy dogs. So I mean people who I perceive as good people and people who I perceive as bad people. And I really do believe, yes, it can be a status thing, but I think it's a lack of education. And it's a matter of turning a blind eye and not wanting to know what is really going on out there. So you just ignore that whole thing where dogs are being dumped, dogs are getting knocked down on the road, people are just abusing animals. You just decide to turn a blind eye on that and say, okay, I wanted a puppy, and oh yeah, this guy, this guy is selling huskies or pugs, and I always wanted a pug, so let me go spend $5,000 and buy it. Now that's a very touchy topic for me because I tend to get in a lot of fights because people want to justify why they purchase. I've heard one person say, I wanted to make sure the dog remains small, and it had to be a pug, because for sure the pug will stay small. But I mean, there's so many good dogs in the shelter who they can guarantee this dog is not going to get too large, and he makes a really good house dog. He's potty trained, no medical conditions. But the truth is, you wanted that pug. So people cannot change. I think regulation, however, can insist that they make that change. So I feel an easy way to deal with the problem, as hard as it may be for the government to do, is stop the importation of animals and crack down on the animal breeders here who has these animals in deplorable conditions, by the way. The animal breeders in Trinidad are not always any different from the ones that you see in the puppy mills in Venezuela or those other countries.
Do you have experience or knowledge of that situation in Trinidad?
My uncle actually recently he got a German Shepherd from an animal breeder. They usually sell them, but he actually got one, right? Even though I told him, don't take the German Shepherd from the animal breeder, go adopt one. He said, no, he wanted a dog that's big and bad for security purposes. So anyway, he went ahead and he got one. When they picked up that dog, Natasha, the dog was close to rotting.
Wow.
In a small, tiny crate. Yeah, the dog was in a crate, like a kennel. I wouldn't say a crate. A kennel with her siblings in a really bad situation.
Oh, God.
And they had to clean up the dog and, give her dewormers, tick and flea meds. She was covered in ticks.
Oh, my God.
And that's just one. I won't go into too many details, but yes, I do have experience. And then recently, somebody else I know bought a pug from an animal breeder in Claxton Bay. The pug has practically no teeth. A puppy, rotten to its core, and a ton of other health conditions. So these people don't care about these cats and dogs. They don't care. They just care about the money. And if we continue to purchase these animals, we are supporting their industry. And we are fueling it and giving them motivation to continue to breed these dogs and cats in deplorable conditions. And it's a never-ending cycle. So the only way to stop that is to stop the purchase of these animals. Whether you think it's a good dog breeder or the dog is house bred or whatever. Some people, they just have 2 huskies at home and they just make pups. They treat the dogs really nice and then they send them off to homes, right? But my thing is, stop supporting all of that and you begin to, the stray population will close in. Because if you want a dog, you want a dog, right? If you really care about dogs and you love animals, you will go and take the pot hound from the shelter or pick up the pot hound from the street. And anybody who doesn't want that, they shouldn't have a dog, sorry.
Tell us about one of the many animals you would have rescued over the years, and what about that particular case was memorable to you?
I quite like the story of Bonnie. She's a stray dog, but I called her Bonnie because she was in Bonaccord. And she was quite a mangy-looking dog with very long nipples. So she probably had quite a few litters. And she used to be walking up and down Milford Road with her puppy. And the two seemed very close, but obviously homeless. And one day when I was at Penny Savers, I saw a man grab up the puppy, put it in a box, run to a taxi, put the puppy in the trunk of the taxi and drive off. And all the while, this poor mother dog was just looking at the man in complete shock and like, where are you taking my puppy? And the look of grief on his face really touched me, and I thought, I need to help this dog. So that day, I saw her walking up and down the road, sniffing and looking, really distressed, looking for the puppy, and I brought her home and got her checked out at the vet. She had tick fever. She had a number of issues that had to be dealt with. And I fostered her for a while. And in that time, I featured her on the Venus Dogs of Love page. And what I mean by featuring is that I don't just put up one picture of a dog and say, okay, this dog is up for adoption. But I feature daily pictures, daily videos, so people get used to the dog, get into the personality. It's kind of like having a daily soap opera. Mm-hmm. And people get attached to the animals that are featured like this. And whereas locally, people were saying things like, oh, she's so ugly, because she had an underbite and these bulging eyes. A woman in the States really thought she was cute and said, look, send Bonnie up and I'll find a good home for her. So everything was arranged. Bonnie flew up to Massachusetts, and the woman, Sandra, who has since become a very good friend through adopting, she and her friends have adopted several of our Tobago rescues. And when she saw Bonnie, she just fell in love with Bonnie, and to this day, Bonnie lives with her. She is a beautiful dog. They all go to puppy school. Some of them go through agility training. Bonnie did agility training. She's won several awards. She's also a kind of not quite a service dog, but she brings a lot of happiness to children in school. She visits a doggy daycare center where she takes care of puppies, so that even though she lost her own puppy and she grieved, it's now like she has a whole new life, lots of puppies cared for and lots of children, and it's a blessing that some of these animals experience when they're adopted abroad and when they're adopted locally to good homes. But the point I want to add is that I find foreigners are more eager to adopt a pothound. They'll be like, oh, how cute, even if it's covered in mange, they can still see the beauty of that dog, and they'll adopt it once it's better.
So that was the Adopt, Don't Shop segment on this Best of Animalia podcast. As I've mentioned before, that is a mantra on this podcast and will continue to be as we work towards reducing the stray and shelter populations by encouraging people to adopt to give the animals most in need a safe, loving home. Spay and neuter. It's practically a refrain now, right? It's one of the single most effective means of controlling the stray population. So, to boost the awareness and education that Animalia delivers, let's hear Kimlin Harilal from episode 2, who, as a foster, knows all too well how important spaying and neutering is. The next voice you'll hear is Dr. Nicole Straker from episode 4, a veterinarian who is versed in shelter medicine and understands the value of this simple procedure. And allow me to congratulate Dr. Straker here, as she won the competition, in air quotes, from episode 7 to guess, although we know she knew this already, to guess which one of Dr. Driscoll's cats was named JW and which was Blaze. Your prize, Dr. Straker, is to assist Animalia with an upcoming TNR project we'd like to embark on. More details to come. Let's go with the spay and neuter flashbacks. Is there one issue from your experience that people should be aware of or appreciative of with regard to rescuing and fostering?
The first thing would be please spay and neuter. An animal, whether it's a dog or a cat, does not need to have a litter, to live a long, healthy life. That is absolutely not necessary. So spay and neuter, because just going through this cycle of reproduction and then throwing them out in a box, because I've found boxes that have been really wrapped nicely. So someone took their time to wrap a box of kittens with ribbon and put them on a corner. So instead of going through that twice a year, 3 times a year,